It's okay to say you live for the Lord. Give him everything you can, man, and give a little more. See, Jesus will return, so don't forget it, my friend. Time to guard your heart and be ready. Soon as I wake up in the morning, let me thank God. Matter of fact, man, I ain't with it if it ain't God. How you tryna get something, know that you ain't got? Boy, you better get something your money can't buy. Knock, who is that? Someone at the door again, man, they go to man. Mama preaching about the Lord again. Knock, who is that? Someone at the door again, man, they go to man. Mama singing about the Lord again. Lord, if I step out on the boat, will you catch me? I trust you so much, I know that you catch me. And you protect me when my enemies attack me. Everyone coming after me, still you had your hand on me. Hey, knock, who is that? Someone at the door again, man, they go to man. Mama preaching about the Lord again. Knock, who is that? Someone at the door again, man, they go to man. Mama singing about the Lord again.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and I am so excited that you tuned in today because I've got some great news. First, let me start off by saying thank you so very much for all of your loyalty and your subscriptions, because Fish Factor has now eclipsed the 1,000 subscriber mark, and we couldn't be more excited about where God has taken this ministry. For those of you who may have just tuned in for the very first time, let me give you an oversight as to what Fish Factor is. Fish Factor is a ministry that takes its faith and its fishing and blends it together for the moving forward of the gospel. And I'm so excited. When we started this journey just a little over a year ago, based on a vision God gave me years ago, I never imagined that it would have such popularity, but I never imagined it would touch so many people. I am so thankful to God, and I'm so thankful to you. And I've got more at the end of this video, so stay tuned on what's going to be happening next, especially when it comes to you. I want to take a moment and do a Q&A if I could. There have been many subscribers ask me questions over the last few months, and I thought it was time for me to just sit down and go over a few of these things. So if I could just get a few minutes of your time, I'm going to go over 6 questions that some viewers typed in to me and sent me asking for me to answer these. So I want to share them with all of you viewers. First, I want to thank everybody who does send comments. It gives me a lot to think about. It gives me a lot to contemplate as it goes with vision for this ministry moving forward. But it also reinforces that God is doing a work, and sharing your testimonies with me and just helping us be involved in your life has made this ministry all that it's supposed to be. Leland Patron writes in, he says, what adhesive did I use for the carpet on the bunks on my trailer? Now, I just used a basic adhesive from 3M, one I believe I got at either Lowe's or Home Depot, that was super strength, extra strength. I don't remember exactly what brand it was, but it was a 3M. And what I did to really make it adhere is first I, with a heavy grit sandpaper, sanded down the bunks to give that adhesive something to stick to. I bought, I believe, at the same home store, a sheet of carpet that was a foot or two in width, and I cut it down the middle, and I saturated those bunks with that 3M adhesive. I laid it on top of there and ran my hands back and forth over it, not to get too much carpet burn, until I felt that it was really secure, and I gave it time to set up before I trimmed the excess of the carpet off of those bunks. I hope that helps you out. Darren Collins wrote in and said, where did I buy my Minn Kota trolling motor mounts for the trolling motor that I mounted to the bow of the Hobie? Okay, so if I'm reading this question right, it said kits. So there are 2 pieces that mount my trolling motor to my boat. First, there's the actual hard mounting plate that I purchased from Mariner Sales that a distributor by the name of On the Water Innovations makes. And I purchased that, and it's made out of steel. It's powder coated, and it mounts to the carrying handle on the front of the Hobie, and then the 2 bolts that mount the lid straps for your lid on the very front, and that secures a good hard surface for the trolling motor to be mounted to. You can mount your trolling motor directly to that, or you can do the second part, which I purchased a disconnect mount that is specific to Minn Kota, this particular model that I got off of Amazon, and I matched it with the model, and it mounts to that plate permanently, and then there's a part that mounts to the trolling motor base itself that allows you to put in a double pin security pin to secure it and lock it if you want to lock it, and then remove it easily at the end of the day if you want to do that. And Randy Manning wrote in some great questions. I appreciate these questions. He starts off by saying, do I have any regrets for moving from a boat to a smaller setup? Now, for those of you who do not know, I did competitive bass fishing out of a boat for many years. And then I stepped away from competition for a long time, and I recently got back into competition, but doing it from a kayak about 3 years ago. So moving from a boat to a kayak, I will say this, it's completely different. The fundamentals of fishing never go away. As fishermen, as anglers, we know that we adapt to all kinds of conditions and we adapt to all of our surroundings. So those fundamentals of casting and flipping and bait selection and conditions that we operate in never change. But there are some vast differences between a boat and a kayak. And I don't have any regrets, let me make that up front. It's just different. From a boat, I had the ease of going to a spot, many spots, as many as you can count in a day, and a gas tank would hold, pull up the trolling motor and go, and you don't have that versatility in a kayak. But I will tell you this, outside of gear, you have to be limited in gear, you have to be limited in a lot of the I would say the accompaniments of what goes on in bass fishing in a boat that normally would help you throughout a tournament day or just a day of fishing. You cannot put on a kayak just for the sake of space and or weight. They're coming along a lot better. I can't imagine my boat taking on any more stuff than I've already put on there. But I don't have any regrets. The biggest difference that I know, and it's an upside to me, all of my PBs and all of my best stringers have actually come out of a kayak. See, I think there's an Achilles heel to being in a boat versus a kayak. And one of those Achilles heels is that I think fishermen out of a bass boat fish a little too fast. I think there's something to be said about too many spots. All right, you see these pros and they move around, and God bless them, they make a living at it and they're better than I am, all right? But for me, slowing down, being forced to slow down and thoroughly fish an area has made me a better fisherman and has consequently produced some of my biggest bags. I believe that when you pre-fish and you find fish and the next day during competition, that doesn't seem to be the case, that pattern hasn't held up. Those fish just didn't vanish. Being in a kayak forces you to slow down to figure out how they've adjusted. So in hindsight, it has made me a better fisherman. So no regrets there, Randy. And number two, he says, most of my videos show me sitting while fishing. Is there a main way or a preferred way that I like to fish out of my kayak? Well, most of my videos do show me sitting down, and there's a reason for that, is my GoPro. I've got some videos recently where I am standing up because the trolling motor actually allows me to stand up and fish more of a conventional, traditional way like you would in a bass boat. Whereas if you're having to pedal or row, you have to be seated. You can't stand up very often unless maybe you're anchored. So yes, I do sit down most of the time because I've gotten accustomed to that. But when I can, I do stand up. And when I figure out how to add more cameras to my boat so I can capture better footage from all angles, I'm going to do that. If not, you're probably getting me from chest down, and I don't know how good that will be for you viewers. But nevertheless, sitting is different from standing, obviously. The biggest challenge for that for me is gear. In a bass boat, traditionally, you fish with 7-foot plus fishing rods. I have found, at least for me, that seated in a kayak, those longer rods are not as efficient, especially when it comes to pitching and flipping and keeping that rod close to the water. Although you are close to the water, it seems like for me, things get hung up quicker. I have shortened my rods. I fish for 7 feet for things that I know that I'm going to be casting a long way. that I know that I'm not trying to flip or skip. But when it comes to flipping and skipping, I've dropped down to 6'6". And some of you may be thinking, well, a lot of those aren't the options anymore, and they're not, especially when it comes to quality. And that's why I have begun to make my own, and I'll explain a little bit of that later. Number 3, Randy says, am I pleased with the way my Hobie is set up now, or would there be anything that I would change? I am pleased. Would I change anything? No, but that's really relevant to the next big thing coming out. It's a trial and error thing, and each person's setup is preference to them. Mine has taken some tweaking. It's taken me 2 to 3 years to really lay out my boat the way I like it. And when you make changes like graphs or trolling motors or even the gear haulers that you have or rod holders and things of that nature, when you set your boat up on this limited space, you're going to have to adapt to a new way of moving about and staying the most efficient as you can. One of the major changes that I made recently, a modification, is I've gotten rid of the rod tubes inside my PA. The rod tubes are great if you're using them. I found myself, because I fish and I like something accessible right at my hands, that I was not using them, and they were wasted space. But the biggest reason I changed is they were taking on water. Now, Hobie designs something efficient. It works well. I don't think that they took the best care in the way they assemble it. It does have a seal, but that seal, I believe, is inferior. Some of the holes are cut irregular for those tubes to set in its cassette. So what I did is I took some of that hard, plastic cutting board material. I forget the technical name of that right now. And I trimmed it just large enough to go outside that hole, and I sealed that shut. The reason why is I was taking on water. When waves would come in, especially with the weight added to the bow of my vessel, when waves would come in, when water would come in, even if it collected through the cassette where my drive is, water was getting into and behind those rod holders and those rod tubes, and it was filling up my boat. And that was a big contributor to why I capsized my vessel on Choke Canyon. If you haven't seen that video, go check that out. So I am pleased with it overall. I can't say that I'd change anything right now, but you know what, Randy, I may change something tomorrow. I just don't know. Next question is there any stability issues with the trolling motor mounted on the bow? Now, as it pertains to stability, I wouldn't say so. Now, obviously, I've added 45 pounds to the bow of my boat, and that makes a difference. I've lightened up what I keep inside my hatch to try to offset some things, yet it's still heavy. You cannot get over that additional weight on such a small vessel with such a smaller footprint at the bow in the water. The displacement that it has and the buoyancy of it, there's a balance there. Stability from side to side, I don't believe that it's fooled with it at all. But one thing I do notice is that if I go too bow forward with my body, if I have to go up front, I have to be very careful not to push the front end of that boat underneath the water. So in that sense, yes, stability has been affected, but it's not something that I haven't overcome yet. Do I leave my trolling motor in the water, or do I use it all the time? Or do I leave my pedal drive in the water, or do I use it all the time? Here's the thing. The trolling motor is in the water most of the time. It's great for distances. It's great for spot lock. But when I get close to an area I want to fish, especially when it's shallow, I pull the trolling motor up and I go into my pedal drive. Now, I leave my pedal drive in the cassette. It doesn't slow me down when I travel because the new PA 360 actually has a concave hull to it, to where when those fins splay open, they actually rest on the very bottom flush with the hull of the vessel, and you can take this bungee that it comes with to hook it onto one of the pedals to keep it reclined, and then you've got a smooth surface, so it doesn't affect any of the steerage, it doesn't affect any of the speed, so that's a big plus. Where I've seen a drawback is pedal driving with your trolling motor down, even if it's not working. In confined areas is not very efficient. The boat doesn't want to turn as sharp as it does when the trolling motor is pulled out. So it's a give and take. I use the trolling motor quite a bit, especially in the summertime when you're offshore or you're moving from spot to spot. But when I get up around trees and things of that nature, I find that pedal drive is a lot more efficient instead of always having to fool with the remote, moving in and out of the trees or around grass or whatnot. So there's a balance there. And the last question is do I have any detailed videos or links that would help him set up the kayak like mine? Well, I've done some videos, but I will tell you this. Most of my rig came from my particular taste and my own ingenuity, if you will, coupled with a lot of great videos out on YouTube that share these detailed things along the way. I do want to detail some things in the future. I may even go back and redo some things just to detail that forward for y'all, because I know there's a need out there. But if you go through the list of different things I have with the DIY, you'll see some of that stuff. Which brings me to a couple announcements. First, I want to expand Fish Factor, not in the sense of what we're doing ministerially, but the content that I bring you, especially in the times where tournaments aren't happening, so I can get more content up for you. And I want to call it Fish Factory. Fish Factory is going to be part of this Fish Factor ministry on the same channel that will do things like product reviews. We're going to do things like DIY stuff. We're going to do things like Q&A, and we'll do other things like building special things like my fishing rods and how I build a fishing rod, the selection in the blank that I use, why I use the components that I do, and how that may help you in the future, whether you want to start building your own or things that you want to look for in the future. And I want to incorporate Fish Factory into Fish Factor to make it a more well-rounded platform of information for y'all. And lastly, off of this 1,000 subscriber mark that we've met, I want to give back to y'all. We did this at 500 and now I'm at 1,000 and I want to do it again for you in a little bit different way. 500 and get quite the participation I was hoping to get. So this is what I would like to do. As soon as this video drops, 7 days from the end of this video, I'm going to take all of your comments, all of the things that you say. Everybody that get on there and comment, share, subscribe. Tell me what you like about the channel. Tell me what you don't like. Tell me what you would like to see more of. Just shout out. Give me some feedback, some encouragement, and all of everybody that participates in that, I'm going to take everybody, put you on a random wheel. I'm going to spin it, and you are going to be the recipient of a prize pack that I'm putting together for this special occasion. Hey, thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your time today. I know your time is valuable. I just want you to know that I care for each and every one of you, that I pray not for you specifically, but as a whole. See, God knows our prayers. I can say to God, there are viewers out there that need encouragement, Lord. There are viewers out there that need to hear you, need to be exposed to your favor and your blessing. They need healing, and He knows exactly who you are. We serve that kind of God. So I don't have to know you by name. But I'm praying for you anyway. I want you to know that. But hey, until the next time we meet, be safe and be blessed in everything that you do. If you get out on the water, wear a life jacket. And hey, if you get out there to fish, hook a good one for me. Until then, be blessed. Peace.